They say don't burn bridges, but sometimes you have to nuke them from orbit just to watch the fireworks. My former boss was the definition of an entitled tyrant. He truly believed he owned this town, he owned the industry, and he owned me. He had this delusional idea that I was nothing without him, a mindless drone lucky to be catching his scraps. He thought he could steal my dignity, suppress my wages, and secure his useless son's inheritance by working me into an early grave. He didn't know that while he was screaming insults, I was counting bricks. He didn't know that the general contractor he hated was quietly handing me the keys to the kingdom. When I finally handed in my notice, he laughed in my face. He told me I'd be starving in the gutter within weeks, but he didn't realize that he had just signed his own business's death warrant. Watching him instantly regret crossing me wasn't just business. It was the sweetest pleasure of my life. Here is how I took down the town's biggest bully without throwing a single punch. But before we watch this bully's empire crumble, do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button to charge up your own good karma for the week. Trust me, you don't want to end up like the guy in this story. Now, let's see exactly how he dug his own grave. To understand why this revenge was so necessary, you have to understand the grip this man had on our community. This was the mid-90s in a cluster of small rural towns. If you wanted a house built, a retaining wall, or a chimney, you had exactly one option: Jerk Construction, because he was the only game in town. He operated like a dictator. Jerk wasn't just a bad boss, he was a soul-sucking vampire. But he wasn't alone. He had his adult son working with him, a textbook golden child. This guy was 30 years old, useless as a screen door on a submarine, and walked around the job site like he was the crown prince inspecting the peasantry. I was young, I was hungry, and I had a family to feed. I took the job because I didn't have a choice. The pay was garbage, barely enough to cover rent and groceries, but my father had raised me right. He told me, "Jerry, your work is your signature. You don't do a good job for the boss, you do a good job for yourself." That advice was the only thing keeping me sane. Every single day was a masterclass in abuse. We'd be out there in 95-degree heat, sweat stinging our eyes, hauling 80-pound loads of mortar. Meanwhile, the golden child would be sitting in the cab of the truck with the air conditioning blasting, eating a sandwich. He'd roll down the window, crumbs falling from his mouth, and scream, "Hey, you missed a spot on that joint. My dad isn't paying you to sleep standing up." I remember one specific Tuesday. I was on the scaffolding, laying brick with a rhythm I had perfected over 3 years. Scoop, spread, place, tap. It was perfect. Jerk climbed up the ladder, his face purple with rage for absolutely no reason. He kicked over my bucket of water. "This is slop," he screamed, spitting flecks of tobacco juice on my shirt. "You call this a corner? A blind monkey could lay a straighter line than this. You aren't worth the minimum wage I pay you. You're lucky I don't fire you right now and let your kids starve." My heart hammered against my ribs, the blood rushed to my ears, a high-pitched whine drowning out the construction noise. I gripped my trowel so hard the handle creaked. I wanted to swing it. I wanted to knock him off that scaffold, but I didn't. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Facts over feelings, I told myself. The fact is, you need this paycheck. The fact is, he's wrong. Jerk assumed I was a pushover. He saw my silence as weakness. He thought I was buying his head games, that I actually believed I was a bad bricklayer. That was his fatal error. He didn't know that I knew I was the best bricklayer in 3 counties. And he definitely didn't know that everyone else was noticing too. The turning point came during the construction of a massive custom home. This was a high-stakes project. The homeowner was wealthy, and the general contractor, GC, running the show was a serious, no-nonsense guy named Bill. Everyone respected Bill, and everyone, including Bill, hated Jerk. I was in the zone that day. I was laying brick at a speed that shouldn't have been humanly possible while maintaining perfect craftsmanship. I was making Jerk thousands of dollars an hour in pure labor efficiency. Jerk and the golden child were pacing below me. "Look at him," the son sneered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Moving too fast?" he He's probably leaving air pockets. We're gonna have to tear this whole wall down. Dad, I know, Jerk yelled back. Hey, idiot, slow down or you're paying for the materials. I kept working. I didn't flinch. I let my trowel do the talking. At 5:00 p.m., the whistle blew. As I was packing up my tools, wiping the gray dust off my hands, I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder. I flinched, expecting another berating. It was Bill, the general contractor. He motioned for me to follow him behind the supply shed out of sight of Jerk's truck. Bill lit a cigarette and looked me dead in the eye. I heard what they said to you today, Jerry, Bill said, his voice low and gravelly. And I've been watching you work for 3 weeks. I've been in this game for 30 years, and I've never seen a bricklayer with hands as steady as yours. I looked down at my boots. Thank you, sir. I just try to do my best. Jerk is a liar, Bill said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. He tells you you're worthless so he can keep paying you peanuts. He knows if you realized your net worth, you'd leave him high and dry. He paused, looking around to make sure we were alone. Have you ever thought about going out on your own, starting your own company? My stomach did a flip. Every day, I admitted. But I can't afford the equipment. A commercial mixer alone costs more than I make in 6 months. I have zero capital. Bill nodded like he expected that answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. I'm tired of dealing with Jerk. He's rude, he's late, and his son is a liability. I want to fire him, but there's no one else to hire. Unless you step up. Bill tore a check out and held it up. It wasn't filled out yet. I will front you the cash for a top-of-the-line mixer, the scaffolding, and the insurance. You subcontract under me for the next 3 houses. You pay me back a percentage of each job until the debt is cleared. No banks, no interest, just a handshake and hard work. Do we have a deal? I stared at the check. It was freedom. It was terrifying. It was everything. I won't let you down, Bill. The next morning, I walked onto the job site. I didn't put on my tool belt. I walked straight up to Jerk, who was screaming at a delivery driver. I'm done, I said calmly. I'm putting in my 2 weeks, but frankly, I'd prefer to leave today. Jerk froze. The golden child laughed, spitting out his coffee. You, the son cackled. Leaving? Where are you gonna go? The circus? I'm starting my own subcontracting business, I said, standing taller than I ever had. Jerk turned red, then purple. He stepped into my personal space, poking a finger into my chest. You are delusional, he spat. You think you can survive in this town without me? I am this town. You're a nothing. You're a grunt. He looked at his son, and they both started laughing, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed off the unfinished walls. I give it 2 weeks, Jerk sneered. You'll be back here, crawling on your knees, begging for your job back. And when you do, I'm cutting your pay by 20% just to teach you a lesson about loyalty. I wouldn't hold your breath, I said. I turned around, walked to my truck, and drove off. I never looked back. The first month was brutal. I worked 16-hour days. I was the CEO, the laborer, the accountant, and the janitor, but every brick I laid was mine. Every dollar I earned went into my pocket or back to Bill. Jerk's prediction of 2 weeks came and went. 2 months later, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Bill, true to his word, fired Jerk from all his projects and hired me exclusively because I wasn't an abusive tyrant. Other general contractors started hearing about the new guy who actually shows up on time and doesn't scream at people. My phone started ringing off the hook. I hired my first employee, a guy who used to work for Jerk. Then I hired another, soon. I had a crew of 4, all former victims of Jerk and Son. We were faster, better, and cheaper because we didn't have the overhead of a golden child's gambling debts or a tyrant's ego. 1 year later, I was sitting in my living room on a Friday night, going over the books. I had just paid off the mixer loan entirely. I was officially debt-free and making 3 times what I used to make. There was a frantic knocking at my front door. I opened it to find a disheveled figure swaying on my porch. It was Jerk, but he didn't look like the tyrant anymore. His expensive suit was stained. He smelled like a distillery. His eyes were bloodshot and watery. "Jerry," he slurred, stumbling forward. "My boy, my star employee." I stood in the doorway, blocking his entry. "Can I help you?" "Jerk, we need to talk," he stammered, leaning against the doorframe for support. Things haven't been good. The industry is changing. It's tough out there. "Business is booming for me," I said coldly. He flinched. "Look, I know we had our differences, but we were family. I taught you everything you know. The audacity, the entitlement." He was trying to rewrite history in real time. "You taught me how not to treat people," I corrected him. "I need you back," he whispered, the desperation finally breaking through his ego. "The boys, they all left. My son, he can't run the crew. The contractors won't hire us. They say we're difficult. I'm losing the house, Jerry. My wife is talking about family court. She wants half of everything, but there's nothing left." He reached out, trying to grab my hand. "Come back as a partner, 50-50. You run the crew. I handle the books. We can rule this town again." I looked at this broken man. I remembered him kicking my water bucket. I remembered him calling me worthless. I remembered him betting on my failure. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I can't afford to associate with a failing business. It's bad for my reputation." "Jerry, please, you're the best employee I ever had," he wailed. I leaned in close so he wouldn't miss a word. "Why didn't you ever tell me that when I was working for you?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had held the winning lottery ticket in his hand, and he had thrown it away because he wanted to feel powerful. "Good night, Jerk," I said. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt, and I went back to counting my money. It has been decades since that night, and the karma that hit that family was absolute. About 2 years after he showed up at my door, Jerk and Son officially filed for bankruptcy. It was ugly, because Jerk had leveraged his personal assets to try and save the sinking business. He lost everything. I heard through the grapevine that the family court proceedings were brutal. His wife left him, citing financial ruin and emotional abuse. The golden child, Son. Once the inheritance evaporated, he had a rude awakening. He actually applied for a job with my company about 5 years ago. I didn't hire him. I don't hire people who don't know how to work. Last I heard, he was working the night shift at a gas station 3 towns over. As for me, that one mixer turned into a fleet of trucks. I run the biggest masonry outfit in the region now. But the most important thing isn't the money. I make sure to tell my guys when they do a good job. I pay them well, I treat them with respect. Jerk said he created a monster when I left. He was wrong. He didn't create a monster, he created a businessman. He assumed because I was quiet, I was stupid. He assumed because I was poor, I was weak. He found out the hard way that the quietest guy in the room is usually the one you need to worry about the most. Lesson of the story. If you treat your employees like trash, don't be surprised when they build an empire out of the rubbish you threw at them.